520 years ago, darkness consumed the world, turning it into chaos. The energy began to change. The scientific world could no longer cope with the new entities. Many giant, terrifying creatures emerged from the depths of the earth and began to devour people, causing huge casualties. People could no longer cope with these creatures and fled in panic. This further increased the chaos and spread fear. John always knew that his time would come. He was born for a great mission. Energy enveloped him and gave him new strength. The main character decides to pass on his knowledge of ancient practices and martial arts to humanity. This became his last hope. Classes were held at the Starlight Base at the Academy of World Martial Arts. The recruits lined up, ready to begin their training, fearlessly fighting for the good of the land. At the first lesson, John told them that the most important thing is practice, which comes only after several thousand combat battles. He told them the 18 forms of combat training and showed them the first of them, his eyes shining with the fiery light of strength, power, and fearlessness. However, the young men did not share his optimism. Not wanting to start with the basics and avoiding training in every possible way, the coach began to get angry. John, in his temper, called them ignoramuses who do not understand what responsibility this world has placed on them. Well, we will have to teach these young men courage and bravery. The master's attention was attracted by a student named Jackson. He trained with enviable zeal, practicing blows again and again. John knew that Jackson was an orphan and had never studied martial arts. There was simply no one to teach him, and he was very surprised where such diligence came from in the guy. The main character became furious when he saw how the young warriors treated training. Unwilling to train diligently, he again and again urged them to train the 18 forms of tempering. As soon as Jackson showed diligence again and again, spending hours training techniques. But John did not believe in him and said that the young man had neither the basics nor the training. By the end of the lesson, 18 forms had been completed, and the master released everyone for a break. After finishing the training, Jackson analyzed the techniques and found that they were too weak, although the master aroused his respect. One day, after a grueling battle for many hours, Jackson had an epiphany. His consciousness suddenly plunged into darkness, and he remembered something very important. He remembered that he was born on Earth in the 21st century, and then from an adult was reborn into a 14-year-old teenager in a parallel world. It happened in a very strange way. One day on his way to work, his pendant shone with a bright light, and he was inexplicably reborn. Jackson understood that in his world he was fluent in martial arts. But here, without true chi, all energies are useless. He realized with regret that even the fact that he got into the martial arts academy meant that he would have to start with the basics that even children know. What terrified him most was that at this rate he would not achieve even in 10,000 years its previous level. On that day, the best student at Robin's Quick Academy was presented with an award. No one could understand where he got such success, because he was only 19 years old. There were rumors that he was the scion of a noble family, and since childhood he had been studying the practices of entities and energies. This was his main business. Jackson was upset, because he was constantly whispered angrily that even by the age of 30 he would not be able to reach such a level. One evening he felt a burning sensation in his chest. It was his medallion burning, giving a strange alert that his mirror space was activated indefinitely. It frightened and surprised at the same time. He found himself in an endless space that shone with 1,000 lights, stretching into the past and future, drawing in and bewitching. Space asked if he would accept the energy of the Lin Qian, to which the main character hesitated and did not know what to answer. Jackson activated the accept button and jumped back in horror. Standing in front of him was a projection of Robin's Quick, who looked like a living Quick. He carefully raised his hand to the mirror. At that moment something incredible happened. The fragments scattered, and his hand plunged into something soft, warm and pleasant. However, at that moment he received a sharp blow and was surprised to see a girl who smoothly emerged from the mirror. This completely threw him into a stupor. She was outraged by Jackson's behavior and demanded that he observe commonplace rules of decency. The main character laughed, and all he could say in response was that the situation certainly could not be trivial. The girl said that she was the energy of the mirror space and its embodiment. She was so beautiful that Jackson could not understand whether it was reality or just a dream. Then he suggested calling her Mora and asked her to explain what was happening here. She told Jackson that the mirror space was a projection of his internal energy, and showed the main character his current characteristics. He was an ordinary 14-year-old boy studying at the art academy, and having completed the first 18 practices. Jackson realized that he had been reborn in the body of this boy, and now he could develop as he liked. He thanked Mora for such a good choice. Mora then showed him a projection of Robin's Quick. He was a 19-year-old boy, an entry-level master, with level 1 techniques, a sword and alloy armor. The projection suddenly became reality and Robin's Quick took a step forward, walking straight out of the mirror, his eyes full of rage, a sword in his left hand, and his right hand clenched into a fist, preparing to strike. Jackson asked Mora what kind of sprint this was. She replied that since he guessed it, he could start the fight. The main character felt fear pierce his body, and questions were swarming in his head. He asked Mora what was happening to his body now. She cheerfully replied that now he was probably passed out. He saw another projection. This man resembled a dead man. Jackson, trembling with fear, asked if he could die here. Mora replied that no, this was only a projection of his consciousness, but the pain of death here would be stronger, so it was better for him to win the fight. The main character begged not to kill him and Mora suggested lowering the difficulty level of the battle. Jackson agreed, although he thought that perhaps even this fight his psyche would not survive. Robin Quick's projection took out his sword and stepped out of the mirror. Jackson himself did not understand how he ended up in battle. Echoes of the past surfaced in his mind, in which he himself asked to increase the level of difficulty. Then he found himself in the forest. But at that moment he realized that Mora was imposing memories that he did not have. With difficulty getting out of the jungle of consciousness, he demanded that she lower the difficulty level. She agreed, but immediately said with a grin that the location in the mirror space could be changed at any time. Jackson took cover behind a tree, trying to freeze and merge with it. He barely breathed so that Robin's and his sword would not overtake him. Mora giggled as she watched Jackson tremble in fear like a timid rabbit. Jackson jumped out sharply, but Robins beat him to it and struck back, starting a fight that Jackson felt lasted an eternity. Robins raised his sword over him, indicating that this blow would be the last for Jackson, but the main character decided to find a weak spot in his armor and destroy the enemy. The blow struck back. Jackson realized that he had made a mistake and now found himself at a severe disadvantage. Then he decided to use a technique in which the force of the enemy's blow would be directed at the enemy himself. But Robins turned out to be more experienced. He simply pinned Jackson to the ground and shouted that his experience was enough to destroy the arrogant youth. This only provoked the main character, who, seeing a huge boulder on the ground, realized that this was his advantage, stood up and, with incredible dexterity, directed it at Robins, hitting him in 1 second. Mora congratulated him on his victory, informing him that every projected opponent killed increases his rank. He passed the first level technique tempering Turtle Snake, then offered to accept her kiss. He saw the tempering forge in his hands and began to doubt whether he needed it, to which Mora reported that its market value was at least $30,000 and advised him to accept it. At that moment, his breathing changed and he heard a hoarse voice that was ancient and sounded like the voice of a dozing turtle. The energy swirled around him furiously, and below Jackson saw a snake that looked like a hellish creature. His entire body was filled with energy, and the main character felt the power that now lives in his limbs. He felt and absorbed it with pleasure. However, Maro assured him that this was self-deception, since one cannot experience the technique by using it only once. Something unexpected happened the next moment. He himself came out of the mirror. Jackson shouted in horror that it was a ghost. Then he realized that he had woken up. Master John was standing in front of him and informed him that classes were cancelled today. At the Academy of Arts the day was just beginning. Heading home, the main character found himself in a strange crowd. Half an hour later he found himself in front of the walls of his house. It was the Dawn Orphanage. Jackson was surprised to realize that he was born and raised here. He tried to be positive and was glad that he had a family, although he doubted that it was good here. A friendly girl met him on the doorstep. It was his sworn sister Liana, who asked why he was released so early, and also added that the son of her class teacher died in a battle with monsters. At that moment, Maro was watching him from the mirror hanging on the wall. Liana made her furious, since the girl did not want Jackson to communicate with such a beauty. Feeling his stomach growl, Jackson asked Liana to cook him something. She happily agreed and cooked him his favorite stewed pork. Liana narrowed her eyes slyly and told Jackson that she had replaced the pepper in the food for the same pepper, to which he only smiled in response, not considering her a great danger. Mora continued to watch them, growing increasingly furious and angry. After dinner, Jackson continued his training with projections of opponents. This time it was the desert, and a new opponent in the form of a tall, strong man. Then there was a battle above the lava, where fiery tongues of flame burned everything around, devouring the space with their fire. Jackson bravely fought tirelessly, overtaking his opponents wherever the three-dimensional space of the mirror took him. He lay practically exhausted on the floor, and Mora pronounced his victories. 24 victories and 57 deaths. He lamented how many times he had to die. Mora, as if nothing had happened, said that he could easily handle it, and decided to raise the level of his last opponent to Pre-Master, at which Jackson became furious. She gave him a pill to activate the hardening of the turtle and snake. He was outraged that in 24 victories he received only this. In the evening, Jackson locked himself in the bathroom to be alone for a little while. He was tired of the battles that lasted all night long, and at this time Liana stood at the door wondering what he was doing there. He thought that Mora was again watching him from the mirror and jumped out of the bathroom screaming. However, he only saw a frightened Liana, who said that she was worried about him. He muttered guiltily that he didn't want to offend her. Liana became emotional and said that it was time for him to go to class, and she prepared him breakfast. At that moment Jackson thought that perhaps they had more than just friendship before. To activate the capsule, he chose an abandoned park in the outer city. Having chosen a secluded place, he activated the turtle and snake capsule. A trembling ran through his body, as if he felt the power and magic of powerful ancient ancestors. The strength of the turtle and the snake seemed to him something supernatural. 10 days later, he felt a powerful surge of strength and was pleased to realize that he had become a pre-master of the initial rank. However, Maro decided to raise his pre-master cultivation to the middle rank. Once again she showed cunning and ingenuity. Jackson guessed that his next opponent was not at all of the initial rank, but decided not to give up and fiercely rushed into battle, striking blow after blow, and after a few minutes he had finished with him. Maro narrowed her eyes slyly and said that he could get the first level technique slashing sword. He announced that he was accepting the technique, after which his consciousness was loaded with 4 years of training, and he realized how his body had changed, filled with strength, power bestowed by the magical gift. The next day, he decided to sneak into the school and get a real sword in order to further hone his fighting art. Upon entering, Jackson saw a stand with swords and stopped in thought. Seeing the prices for swords, he became furious and shouted that this was robbery. Jackson became furious and decided that the best way to earn money for swords was through battle, although he still took one of them. It was an iron sword for junior students. However, this weapon broke after a minute. His attention was drawn to a bottle with unusual contents. It was a drop of blood chi, which, according to legend, gave unprecedented strength, energy and power. He walked in thought, not understanding where this would lead. Arriving home, he found Liana, who had just returned from the job she took to support him, since Jackson was attending the academy. Suddenly there was a terrible explosion from above, which shattered the windows of the upper floors into smithereens, their fragments flying to the sides. Jackson deftly intercepted one of the fragments flying straight at Liana with his hand and threw it aside. She was surprised at how he had changed, because she had never noticed anything like that in him before. People noticed an evil monster above their heads, and this caused panic and nervous excitement among those present. The guy met the monster for the first time since his arrival in this world, and this event caused him excitement and some anxiety. The main character was surprised when he realized that even a dead monster could be provoked by his presence. This showed that the world he found himself in was full of unexpected dangers and secrets, and he must be on guard even in the most unpredictable situations. A few minutes after noticing the monster, it began to show signs of activity. The main character was amazed by this phenomenon, and could not take his eyes off what was happening. The projection really worked, and he realized that he was able to copy even monsters. This discovery opened up new perspectives and opportunities for him. So the guy who was having dinner decided to spend the evening meditating alone, as his way of focusing and better understanding his new abilities. The protagonist discovered that he could simulate weapons in mirror space. This discovery gave him the ability to create and use a variety of weapons to combat the dangers of the world in which he found himself. Since the guy had his first victory, he knew that he would be guaranteed to drop an item as a reward for his success. This became an additional incentive for him to continue fighting and cultivating. After the fight with the black golden eagle, the main character challenged the projection 5 more times, but was never able to repeat his success. Apparently it was a special case and he needed more practice. Jackson decided to try to create a projection of the flesh and blood of a black golden eagle. It was a new challenge to his abilities and he was ready to test his skills to the limit. He discovered a new power in the form of meditation, a practice that allowed him to better understand and control his abilities, as well as deepen his connection with mirror space. Jackson came to Jason to share his latest discoveries and new abilities, and together they discussed strategy and future actions, preparing for new challenges. As it turned out, the guy could not project Jason, and he could only continue to challenge the black golden eagle to improve his skills and improve his abilities. Alice noticed that something was wrong with Jackson. She felt his anxiety and determination and decided to find out what was happening to her friend. The girl said that only 1 in 100 martial arts masters is born with the attribute. It was a rare and valuable gift that could make the master even more powerful. Jackson began to focus, striving to better master his attribute and develop his skills. It was important for him to use his full potential. The main character finally became a mid-ranking martial artist. His persistence and diligence bore fruit, and he was ready to move on to new achievements and challenges. The guy witnessed the chase of bandits who were chasing some stranger. Events developed quickly, and he decided to watch what was happening to find out what was happening. But as it turned out, this stranger was Jason. The guy was surprised to learn that his friend had clashed with bandits. Jackson nevertheless decided to help his friend defeat his opponents. He joined Jason in the fight against the bandits, preparing to use his mid-rank martial arts skills. Jason couldn't understand where the guy came from in the forest. His appearance was a mystery to him, but he was grateful for the help in the fight with the bandits. The next day, military vehicles arrived at the academy, apparently with soldiers. This caused concern and questions among the students. They did not know what was happening. The place where the junior students practiced was filled with tension and anticipation. The arrival of military vehicles and soldiers aroused interest and bewilderment among the students. They expected clarification from the academy administration. The director was with the captain of this army. The students were in the dark about the reason for their arrival and discussed possible scenarios of what was happening. The guide decided to project one of the soldiers. His skills in modeling weapons and military equipment could be useful for a more detailed study of the situation. This soldier didn't really see any problem with the guy and fought him with ease. The guy used his fighting skills to determine what tactics and techniques the soldiers used. The man said that they had specially selected hundreds of monsters, and the students would need to defeat one of them alone or by forming a team. This was a serious test for the academy students. The man could not understand what was happening to Jackson and thought that he was so scared just by hearing the content of the evaluation. Jackson remained a mystery to others with his unusual abilities and behavior. But at this time he was fighting in his space with that same soldier. Jackson used the projection to practice his skills and combat techniques. When one of the guys tried to somehow provoke Jackson, he regretted his words and saw a real monster in him. Jackson demonstrated his strength and determination not to leave those who groveled before him unpunished. All these young men had never been in real combat, unlike Jackson, who had experience in combat and knew how to behave in difficult situations. All the students set out to fight the upcoming monsters, preparing for the trials and trying to prove their skills and strength in battle. The guy was faced with a difficult choice of weapons to fight monsters, because each type of monster required its own approach and strategy. Seeing this result, the other students could not hide their amazement, as Jackson easily defeated his opponent. The man's heart beat like a drum in his chest, and his breathing slowed as he realized that he was on the verge of a great adventure, experiencing mixed feelings of fear of the unknown and excitement of the possibilities ahead. Jackson, seizing the moment, decided to take a little rest, sitting down on a comfortable bench outside, where the warm breeze caressed his face and he could allow himself to relax a little. After lunch, almost everyone had small wounds on their bodies, as if they had become an integral part of the day and characterized it as special and unforgettable. On the board was a list of students whose names had been crossed out, highlighting their magnificent achievements and successful completion of this important test. The man was sure that Jackson had incomprehensible secrets that could be very useful, and he was determined to invite him into the army to unravel these secrets together. But the director was unshakable in his determination. He would not allow him to send Jackson to the army, because he was his favorite student and appreciated his talent and devotion. The guy was at a loss, unable to understand how so many people had gathered in this place, and his mind was not strong enough to explain this unexpected gathering. The students rushed into the principal's office like a storm, ready to express their opinions and wishes with unbridled energy and determination. He began to explain why Jackson was rated above all the others, because he was an iron-haired boar who had mutated to rank 2 right before the evaluation, which left no room for doubt about his outstanding abilities. The main character strongly hoped that he had stepped into a decent establishment, where they valued honesty and provided quality goods and services. The guy gave her the feathers that were extracted from the 3rd-rank black golden eagle monster, like a valuable gift symbolizing wisdom and strength. Jackson asked his supervisor to take a 6-month vacation, seeking time for rest and self-discovery. The director politely asked what level Jackson was at now, showing concern for his development and success. And now a week has passed. After 3 months of grinding in the system, the guy has finally reached the level of an ordinary top-class martial artist, and his muscles testified to his perseverance. Jackson couldn't understand why the benefits of attributes didn't start to appear even at the level of an ordinary top-ranked martial artist. Attribute warriors are able to autonomously absorb energy corresponding to their own attributes to enhance their bodies, a process that proves to be more effective than using pills or using the blood and flesh of monsters. Over the past 3 months, he has successfully mastered the 2nd-rank martial arts skills known as Inhuman Strength Palm and Limit Transcending Fist. In the night snowy forest, outside the Starlight Base, monsters live, presenting endless danger, but also attract hunters with their resources. While most people spend money on expensive maps to unravel the distribution of monsters, the guy was lucky because his friend, who had visited this place many times, passed on his experience to him. The first top-rank monster, the Azure Flower Snake, has such strength and poison that even one bite from it can neutralize any warrior who is not an ordinary top-ranked martial artist. This attack predicted his next move, and there was no way he could avoid it. By using the hardness of the Golden Dome, the guy successfully protected himself from the attack that predicted his next move. In a split second, the guy, taking advantage of the hardness of the Golden Dome, prepared for the moment when he could deliver his attack to the enemy. The man was completely unprepared for such an unexpected turn of events, and his surprise was as clear as daylight. From the experience of his friend, Jackson realized that in addition to fighting monsters, it is necessary to be vigilant to secretive hunters who are ready to attack suddenly, as happened with the main character. Unfortunately, the man only had 3 bottles of pills and some blood left, and his equipment was tattered, so it's no wonder he tried to rob the guy. Since Jackson received nothing useful from the man and did not see him as a threat, he decisively left the place. The 2 partners had been quietly watching Jackson and the stranger during the incident, possibly preparing for their own actions. They couldn't believe that this guy was really 15 years old. He had very terrifying fighting skills and senses. This was normal, as the guy was proficient in the rank 1 martial art known as sword slash. They wondered how this was possible, and it occurred to them that he might have started practicing at the age of 4. All that remains is to wonder where lies the strength of this guy, causing surprise and admiration of his observers. The main character returned alive from the forest, with an experience that will forever change his view of this mysterious and dangerous world. He spent most of the day hunting monsters in the dark snowy forest, and his backpack was too small to contain all the spoils, so he had to choose only valuable materials, such as flesh and blood. Deeply frustrated and irritated, he realized that the many efforts he had spent on hunting were almost useless, and this caused his rage. As a result, all collected items were sold for $300,000, which is even less than the cost of black golden eagle feathers. The guy regrets that he did not meet a monster with an attribute talent, but he is sure that it is important not to rush, and sooner or later luck will smile on him. Jackson felt surprised when he encountered the aroma of meat that filled the interior of the house, causing him questions and interest. In today's world, a good meal is almost like a holiday for the average person and deserves hard work. The guy had a goal in the form of achieving the status of a real martial artist, passing the entrance exams to the Starlight Inner City Academy, and subsequently purchasing a house in the city center for his family and future children. 2 days have passed since the last events. Today, the main character is transferred to a higher course, and now he does not need to hide in the shadows since he deserves attention. The teacher emphasized that in this place there is one ironclad rule: not to become a real martial artist until the age of 30, but at the same time not to relax, relying on the remaining 15 years. Raising his hand, Jackson told the teacher he wanted to take a leave of absence, feeling he needed some time for rest and self-reflection. Naturally, this caused surprise, given that he had asked for leave on the very first day after arriving at this place. The principal asked the teacher to pay more attention to teaching this boy, but even he did not expect such a development on the first day. The main character requested a vacation of 2 months, although he initially wanted to ask for 6 months, but realized that this would be excessive. The teacher threatened to give the boy a lesson if he did not provide a valid reason for the requested leave, causing the protagonist to become nervous. Under unclear circumstances, the protagonist admitted that he felt uncomfortable divulging the details of his request for leave. The teacher lost his temper and said that a month or 2 of vacation was too much, and at a minimum, the guy should explain it to him, because he is the class teacher. The guy proposed to resolve this situation through sparring. If the teacher defeats him, he will stay, but otherwise, he will be given a vacation. The man couldn't believe that the guy wanted to fight him, but was sure that he would win. The girl said that, despite the higher level of improvement of a man, in terms of martial arts and practical experience, the main character is significantly inferior. The guy had no other choice, because he had nothing else to study at the academy, otherwise he would simply be wasting his time. The opponents were ready to spar. The man knew that if he didn't change Jackson's way of thinking now, his future growth would become impossible. Perhaps a little defeat would help him. Provoked by a desire to prove his resolve, the protagonist used the inch walk technique to demonstrate his determination and persistence in sparring. Determined to show off his flexibility and skills, Jackson decided to use his fingers instead of a ball during sparring. The teacher, apparently, was surprised by the speed and determination with which the guy began to act. Not wanting to miss out on opportunities, he decided that he needed to be proactive with his time so as not to waste years passing by. It was unbearable for him to lose to his student, and he decided to make every effort to prevent defeat. He could not fathom how the protagonist could master inch walking so skillfully, considering it an almost incredible achievement. The teacher considered the inch walk a useless exercise and was surprised that the main character could use it in sparring. Alex was determined and ready to launch his attack to teach the guy a life lesson and emphasize his superiority. Over time, he realized that he had put too much power into his attack, and in addition, the guy was able to successfully use his protective dome. After a moment, the main character decided to respond to the attack without leaving the man in a neutral position. With confidence and persistence, Jackson acted confident of his victory, continuing the sparring with a high degree of self-confidence and skill. The last thing the man saw was Jackson's powerful fist, which flashed before his eyes, ending the fight. Jackson successfully used a fist that is capable of breaking limits, ending the sparring in his favor. To everyone's surprise, Jackson suddenly stopped his moving fist just before punching, giving the impression of a sudden stop. With respect to his teacher, the guy announced that the man allowed him to win this fight. Alex was quite scared and did not expect the guy to be so strong and able to cope with him. The guy begged the teacher to keep his word and allow him to go on vacation, respecting his promise. The teacher was amazed at the level of skill of the 15-year-old student. His movements and understanding of martial arts aroused surprise and respect. Jackson hastily decided to leave the place abruptly, without further thought, trying to leave as quickly as possible and avoid confrontation. All those present were in great shock from what they saw. They did not expect such a turn of events and were amazed. If he returns now, he will probably be scolded, so it is better to go to the dark snowy forest, where he can hunt third-rank monsters, which are often alone. Due to limited time, the main character chose a bus for a high-speed transfer, realizing that he could not afford a single second of downtime. Sometime after his decision, the main character entered into battle with dangerous opponents, preparing for a new battle in a dark, snowy forest. And not only with people, but also with huge monsters, the main character fought in a dark, snowy forest. Fate smiled upon him, bestowing him with a low-rank wind attribute talent, which greatly enhanced his abilities in battles with monsters in the dark, snowy forest. His arsenal of wind attribute energy was dominated by green, which gave him an advantage when fighting monsters in the dark, snowy forest. The main character, possessing the gold energy attribute talent and the wind attribute talent, succeeded without active cultivation, fighting monsters and gathering resources. To further increase his power and ability to destroy high-rank monsters, he definitely needs to obtain 5 to 6 attribute talents, and only then will he achieve his goals. The girl reminded the guy that monsters with attribute talents are very powerful, and he risks dying without even coming close to them. The teacher approached the director, presented the details of his sparring with the guy and asked for advice, sharing his doubts and concerns about further actions. The man advised the teacher to relax and advised him to sit down and drink a cup of tea to calm his nerves and make a decision with composure. The history of their school was filled with many instances where teachers gave in to their students, and the man appreciated that this was exactly what happened to him. Alex was at a loss, unable to understand how he could feel joy in such a situation, when defeat seemed humiliating and strange. The director noticed that Jackson's skin had a golden hue, indicating a rank 2 body tempering technique and indicating his advancedness in this field. The teacher was dissatisfied and confident that the guy was hiding important details of his training, and did not believe his claims about the second-rank body tempering technique. The principal realized that having such a talented student in his class was a great success, and he dreamed that when Jackson became famous, his own fame would also increase. Despite this, the teacher realized that he was not the first to teach Jackson, and despite this, he saw potential in him. The teacher was worried that if someone found out that he was teaching Jackson, there might be negative consequences or attract unwanted attention. Alex knew that if someone found out that he was related to Jackson, it might draw attention and interest not only to the guy, but also to the teacher himself, and the previous mentor would become less of an issue. The teacher expressed confidence to the principal that his status and authority would not change as a result of Jackson's teaching because he was an adult and competent professional. Given Jackson's talent, the teacher considered himself lucky to realize that he had nothing to teach his student, and suggested that he be allowed to study on his own at home. The principal and teacher decided it was important to prevent Jackson from realizing that school would provide him with few useful skills, so the principal suggested sending the boy a box. The director was completely tired of talking and said that it was time to stop discussions and make some decisions for today. The director's heart ached, and he hurried to end the conversation, asking him to bring the box before he changed his mind and decided against making any decisions. With confidence in his voice, the man took the oath, ready to bring the box to the main character, even if it requires him to sacrifice his own life. After the past 50 years, the man began to hope to see that their school had finally produced a genius who could change their destiny. Then the director will be able to die without regret in his heart and with a calm soul. In 2 months there will be an exam of 4 schools. The guy must shine and show what he is capable of, thereby glorifying his school. In the forest, Jackson noticed the 3rd-rank monsters called the Fire Ant Army, which looked spectacular. He was sure that these guys were very weak. Their shells and fire poison were very valuable, so they would bring a lot of money. The main character told his partner not to worry because he would be careful with the fiery poison. But she wasn't worried about the fiery poison, and told the guy to look around, hinting that he was in danger. He couldn't understand why no one told him that these ants can camouflage themselves by changing their color, thereby having some advantage. There were really a lot of these ants, and the main character could only run away. On top of that, the guy had to fight another monster, which could add even more problems. He sarcastically apologized to him, and said that he would have to hold off this army in his place. Despite all the difficulties and persecution of the army, the main character manages to avoid them and returns home, planning to continue his path to success. For half a day, the main character ran away from an army of separating red ants, and he was lucky that the bodies of the monsters delayed the pursuit, otherwise he would have died. After successfully selling the materials he brought, the main character received only 20,000, which turned out to be not so much, but it was good initial capital. To purchase housing in the city center, the protagonist will need to raise at least $100 million, which has become his long-term goal. Without clear explanation, Jackson is attacked by his own teacher, Alex, causing shock and bewilderment among the main character and those around him. Having made a fuss from Jackson, the director quickly ran to the scene and hit Alex, who was fighting with her son, hard, causing general shock and bewilderment. After the blow, she realized that she was mistaken and began to apologize because she thought that Alex was her son, but it turned out that this was not the case. Alex recognized Jackson as the best student of his entire career and agreed to give him 2 months to study and develop independently. The school decided to give the main character something special, hoping that it would help him on his journey of becoming stronger and more experienced. The gift that he found inside caused him real delight and surprise. He appreciated this gesture of the school and hopes that the gift will help him in the future. These are very expensive pills, costing at least several million. These are third-rank pills, the kind that cannot be bought in the outer city. The director was shocked to hear that buying a house in the city center required several $1 million. This amount seemed huge to her. Alex expressed his honor as Jackson's homeroom teacher and walked away, leaving the boy delighted with his words and support. The main character assumed that the school principal sent him these pills, and now he owes him. However, he needs to carefully check their authenticity. Upon learning that the pills were real, Jackson felt relieved and grateful to the director, realizing that this was another gift towards his goal. Jackson realized that before taking these pills, he needed to carefully prepare his body and mind to get the maximum benefit from them. The guy put a sign on the door, warning him not to be disturbed, and began taking pills, preparing for their effects. The immediate reaction to taking the pills did not take long, and Jackson felt the energy begin to penetrate his body. He realized that these pills could really change his destiny, and now he had to carefully master this new energy in order to become stronger. As the pain subsided, he began to comprehend this new power and prepared for long and intense training to master it completely. The main character felt that his world was expanding, but with such news came anxiety, since he would have to be more vigilant and careful. Faced with a difficult choice, Jackson decided to focus and succeed despite the difficulties, and ultimately pulled himself together and acted decisively. The guy used a move that emulated a snake bite to subdue his opponent and gain the upper hand in the duel using the art of combat. Jackson also incorporated an element of jumping and squatting into his workout. Proper exercise really helped Jackson cope with pain and fatigue, making him stronger. Strength and training and new pills gave Jackson strength and confidence, but a little fear was still present as he walked into the unknown. Jackson began to feel his body undergoing changes under the influence of the new pills, and he was worried that it might be dangerous. This dedication and self-discipline helped him on his way to strengthening his body and developing martial arts skills, albeit with pain and difficulty. With increased physical strength, speed and defense, he came to realize that his persistence and self-improvement had yielded tangible results. At this stage, most people stop and work on strengthening their blood energy, but the main character is ready to move on and improve its quality. The protagonist realized that he needed to find a way to extract pure blood through attribute talent in order to advance in martial arts mastery. The guy remembered that he should return to training and share his new knowledge with friends. He can't wait to show his potential after training. Severe hunger took hold of the main character, and he went looking for food to restore his strength after intense training. The main character reassured his sister, assuring that he would soon become even stronger and would be able to improve their living conditions without worrying about the little things. The main character spent a week in the forest, carefully exploring its expanses in search of a monster with an attribute talent, but the task was extremely difficult. Having stumbled upon a sign that indicated that the interior of the forest began ahead, inaccessible to the rescue team, the main character realized that valuable objects awaited him further. At this distance, it shouldn't be a problem. If he got closer, he would be able to provoke the aggression of a rank 4 or higher ferocious beast, but then even one blow would be fatal. The monster, coming out, began to examine the surroundings, as if sensing the presence of danger that lay in wait for it very close. Jackson took a deep breath and, with the power of his new attribute talent, attacked the monster with unstoppable energy and determination. Jackson easily dealt with the monster, cutting off its head. His new skills and attribute talent made him stronger and more confident. Jackson met a rank 3 monster with blue scaly skin. The battle was not easy, but his strength and skills allowed him to defeat the dangerous opponent. The chief defeated a rank 3 blue fish monster while a stranger was approaching him. The man was approaching with a sword and armor, causing Jackson bewilderment and anxiety. Perhaps this would be a new challenge for the guy. Jack, a mid-ranking martial artist, announced a hunt for a monster with an attribute talent, and Jackson joined him in searching for a dangerous rank 3 monster in the forest. Jack warned the guy that wandering alone through the dark snowy forest is very dangerous, and suggested that they look for the monster together. Jack warned the guy against wandering alone through the dark snowy forest, while refusing to share fish meat so as not to attract monsters. The main character had already copied all of Jack's items into the mirror, so he didn't need to share the fish meat with the stranger. Jackson discovered that the mid-rank martial artist had many valuable things, which gave him the opportunity to postpone his journey to the dark snowy forest. The guy fought with this blue-scaled fish, showing strength and skill, trying to defeat this ferocious beast of the 3rd rank. Jackson faced the blue-scaled fish again and continued his duel, fighting hard to defeat this dangerous rank 3 beast. After the fight with the fish, Jackson had to fight Jack, a mid-ranking martial artist who approached him. After defeating Jack, Jackson acquired the water attribute talent and mastered the Star Sword technique, which became an important achievement in his development path in the world of martial arts. Having received the water attribute talent and the Star Sword technique, the guy realized that he had a chance to learn from Jack and become even more powerful in the future. Jackson, having received a new attribute talent of water and mastered the Star Sword technique, decided to immediately begin training and testing a new technique. The main character got angry because the girl did not explain that the mirror subspace can create weapons, and he wasted an expensive real weapon when learning the sword technique. As he entered the fight again, he felt how his water attribute talent gave his attacks a new dimension, enhancing their power and speed. Different from the golden sharpness and the wind of ferocity, the attribute energy of water proved to be gentle and healing, speeding up the healing process of his body. Yes, the water attribute has a healing effect, which means he will be able to heal his wounds faster and more efficiently in the future. With 3 attribute talents, it would indeed be much easier for Jackson to become a martial artist in the near future. Cultivating and developing attribute talents will be the key to his success in becoming a martial artist. Seeing a group of people, Jackson realized that he had a chance to find a partner. Perhaps this would help him quickly develop his combat skills and attribute talents. The guy replied that he was looking for a sparring partner who was ready to fight and help him develop his fighting skills. When they saw his eyes, they were scared because it felt like he had killed a lot of people in the past. He looked at them with eyes as if he had killed many people in the past, and his appearance was more terrible than any ferocious beast. These people realized that fighting him would be suicidal, for his strength and clearly inhuman appearance made them fear for their lives. Despite his physical weakness, the man tried to show aggression and anxiety in order to maintain his self-esteem and the respect of others. Jackson was now in control of the situation and finding out the details while they were in a position where they had to answer his questions. The protagonist warned them of the possible consequences if they did not cooperate and answer his questions. Jackson interrogated them, finding out what they were doing here and where they came from, threatening that otherwise trouble would follow. Realizing that they were looking for him, the main character decided to find out why they needed his name and promised to help if they told him what was happening. Realizing the danger of his situation, the main character talked with the bandits, explaining to them that he did not want confrontation in his city, trying to avoid violence. The main character decided to act quickly and without further ado, striking the bandit with a strong blow to the neck to protect himself. He calmly did not care about the fate of these people, but if they became involved in the events taking place in this house, he would be forced to visit their secluded nest. From the man's point of view, the whole situation seemed humiliating, since it represented humiliation in his eyes. The man announced that if the guy immediately accepted responsibility and apologized to their boss, he might be forgiven and released. After the man's statement, the guy exploded with emotion and resolutely shut him up. He could no longer tolerate the pronunciation of derogatory words. Jason ran restlessly to the guy, wanting to warn him against unfortunate consequences, because it was important to avoid unnecessary conflicts and misunderstandings. Despite the fact that the guy managed to defeat several opponents, the head of the Black Axes remained incredibly powerful and strong. But the delay took its toll, and the enemies were already close, ready for action. From behind the guy, a sudden attack was launched using a mysterious and incomprehensible device, which caused him mixed feelings of amazement and anxiety. Of course, Jackson reacted quickly and managed to prevent harm to himself by acting with caution and determination. A new group of people suddenly appeared on the horizon, and their arrival caused some tension and excitement among those present. If his past had remained a secret, he would have remained unnoticed in this area and unnoticeable to them, attention only coming to him thanks to the information revealed. Jason said that Jackson should stay at a distance from this man, because he was the right hand of the leader of the Black Axes and personally defeated their gang. The man said that he and his brothers came to the guy with a purpose, and now it was time for him to rest and sleep. With a mocking voice, the enemy noted that he was really sorry that this orphanage was closing today, at this time. Jackson sternly warned the man not to interfere with the children inside. The girl jumped outside and urgently asked the guys to stop, then invited them inside the house. In parallel with this, the man betrayed the order, demanding the immediate disappearance of all those present. Jason painfully blamed himself for believing that he had gotten everyone into this situation. But when he finally opened his eyes, he was completely unprepared to see such an unexpected sight in front of him. When he opened his eyes, he did not expect to see that everyone around him had been killed and was lying on the floor, creating a terrible sight of destruction. Carefully watching what was happening below, the guy held an arrow in his hands, which seemed to promise a change in the fate of those who were under its sharp gaze. Determined to get the better of his latest opponent, he began to unravel all the obscurities and mysteries that had led them to this point. And it was with this arrow, aimed straight at the man's heart, that he dealt the final blow, closing the chapter of this story with impressive cruelty. The man was a mid-ranking pre-master with a variety of fighting techniques, and Jason couldn't believe that the guy was able to defeat him. The main character ordered Jason to follow him to the Black Axe's lair, hinting at important revelations and the mission that awaited them. Of course, he could not understand why they would go there, and the question remained in the air, full of mystery and unknown dangers. Asking the director not to interfere, he reminded that these men posed a threat to the shelter, and that he was obliged to deal with them in order to ensure the safety of the place where his friends and comrades were. Jackson assured the girl that he would be fine and that he was willing to confront the Black Axes to protect them all. She said that if he promised to return safely, then she would not stop him and was ready to report everything to the police to ensure his safe return. Alice also went outside to return the guy his things, supporting his determination and willingness to fight the Black Axes. She only asked him not to overdo it, expressing her concern and hoping for his safe return. The director asked if it could be that the guy anonymously donated that money, and perhaps he has already become so old that he is capable of such actions. Even more, he became a real man, ready to take responsibility, and do incredible things in the name of those he loves and protects. During this time, the men celebrated and raised their glasses to celebrate the victory and bond, sharing moments of joy together. However, they did not yet know that the man had not been able to finally deal with the guy, and that the shadow of a threat still hovered over their celebration. The leader noticed that something was approaching him, and an invisible threat began to develop, causing everyone to pay attention and be on guard. In addition, a loud explosion was heard at the entrance, shrouding everyone in fear and chaos, leaving the men with no choice but to react to the new threat. Before them, those present saw a terrifying sight: the heads of their brothers in arms, their friends, standing in gloomy contrast with the evening light. They could not understand who could do this to the deputy head, and a feeling of helplessness overwhelmed them, leaving a bitter taste of ignorance. They could not believe that the deputy leader was dead, and the bitterness of loss overwhelmed them, leaving an unfilled void in their hearts. But from the man's reaction it was not clear that he somehow felt sorry for his brothers in arms. On the contrary, he grinned, as if enjoying the horror he had caused. And at this time, just the same, the main character entered the building, ready to face the one who brought such an inhumane death to his comrades. The leader immediately began to approach him, fierce determination shining in their meeting glances between the two enemies. The man still continued to smile widely, But the guy's gaze was cool, despite the outward confidence of his opponent. Their battle is destined to become legendary, and will go down in history as a symbol of uncompromising struggle and determination. Jason was sure that even if Jackson broke through to the top rank, he would not have time to strengthen his cultivation. Even if he had time, they would have been matched in strength, skill and determination, creating an impressive confrontation. The guy was confident in his victory and did not feel worried, relying on his skills and inner confidence. Jason couldn't believe that Jackson had a perfect golden dome. The main character has already bought all the necessary valuables and resources on the black market, organizing the economic restoration of the outer city. And yet, after some time, they inevitably clashed fist to fist, unleashing a battle that promised to be epic. The guy's blow turned out to be more powerful, and he threw his opponent several meters away, demonstrating his strength and superiority in this confrontation. And after that, he was ready to deliver the final, decisive blow that would determine the outcome of this epic battle. He put all his remaining strength into this blow, aiming for victory and trying to end this fight with one powerful blow. The blow was so powerful that the guy's body broke the floor, creating a stunning effect and ending this fight with an impressive victory. The subordinates could not believe that their leader had been defeated, and their surprise was so deep that it pierced the entire room, leaving a trace of the recent event. Jason couldn't believe what was happening either, and his thoughts became confused by this moment of incredible surprise. Unlike Jason, Jackson was absolutely confident in this victory and did not show much reaction, remaining calm and unperturbed. When the man asked to be spared, the guy did not approve, arguing that justice must be unshakable and that victory would bring a lesson that could not be forgotten. Jackson said that the other guys are on Jason's side, and the struggle for power and control of the orphanage is just beginning. The bandits were clearly frightened by this news, realizing that their conflict with the main character and his allies would only worsen, and the real fight was just beginning. Jason was ready to give his opponents some important information, raising the interest and attention in the room. Instead of continuing to fight, they decided to submit to Jackson, realizing that his allies were strong and it was better to follow his instructions than risk further losses. Jackson did not accept their submission and simply left the room, showing that his goals and intentions remained mysterious and opaque. The protagonist decided to check the notification that came to him, and his curiosity began to pique as he revealed the contents of the message. The main character was told not to forget to return to the academy after the holidays, as entrance tests would begin soon, reminding him of the upcoming challenges and opportunities. The purpose of the entrance exams for the 4 academies is to recruit talents from the outer city to the inner city base called Star and Light, where their skills and potential will be tested. It seems that the director gave him 3 mysterious pills, indicating that it would help him perform as a black horse in the upcoming tests and achieve amazing results. As it turns out, the main character strives to get to the inner city in order to meet even more strong fighters, copy their skills and fight with them in search of faster and more effective development. Jason asked if it was possible to take control of the Black Axes, expressing interest in the possibility of combining their powers and resources. The main character was still reluctant to bother with the Black Axes, but Jackson reminded him that, above all, his personal strength and independence were the most important, and he should not rely too much on others. Today he realized that real power lies in the ability to defeat an entire gang alone, and if the guy decided to enter into a confrontation, there would be nothing left of them in an instant. Jackson asked the guy to come back and take care of the guys and also monitor the shelter, expressing concern that something might happen to their house while he was not there. If he ended up in the inner city, he would temporarily be unable to take care of the orphanage, and Jackson wanted someone there to always guard and support him. Therefore, he needs to find time to train Jason, and given the limited amount of time, focus on developing his skills and cultivating his potential. He also heard that all the trial participants are top-ranked pre-masters, and if he wants to defeat them, he needs to get closer to the master's skill, so he must work hard on himself and develop his skills. Jackson was still able to defeat the man, demonstrating his strength and skill in this fight, leaving his mark on this battle. But to the guy's surprise, nothing fell out of the defeated man, and this raised new questions and secrets in their struggle. And the next time they collided, the scenario remained unchanged, and the guy continued to be surprised at the absence of any object that fell out of the man. And the next time, They continued to fight their battles, and each time the guy remained with the same surprise, not seeing the items falling out. The guy's nerves were on edge, because he couldn't understand why nothing was falling out of the man, and this began to undermine his confidence. Jackson apparently realized that with first-level techniques and 3 attributes, reaching master level in 2 months was unlikely, leaving the choice between obtaining high-ranking skills and more intensive practice. After a long time, the main character finally achieved something significant, a 3rd-level practice called Tyrant Practice, which brought him closer to new heights of mastery. He decided to embrace this new achievement and began to immerse himself in the study and practice of the Tyrant's practice with determination and perseverance. But unexpectedly for both him and the girl, he was overcome by indescribable pain, and they were left bewildered, trying to unravel the reason for this strange moment. It was very painful, because the pain pierced every cell of his body, like thousands of ants stinging him inside. He instantly achieved perfection in the 3rd-level practice, but his body resisted, requiring him to relax and control. He, however, would never in his life faint in front of a girl, and so he found the strength to cope with the pain and continue moving forward with his determination. The main character began to meditate in order to restore balance and end the pain that suddenly gripped him. The guy had been cultivating all night, and now his foundation was about to stabilize, bringing him closer to new heights of skill and strength. While he was away, Jason actually reformed the Black Axe Gang into the Dawn Society. If the headmistress had found out about this, she might have been furious with such a decision. The guy was immediately greeted by Jason's subordinates, ready to express their loyalty to the new leader and support him in his efforts. For unknown reasons, they were terribly frightened by the sight of the guy, and their reaction raised questions and bewilderment. Jason was glad that the guy had finally taken the time to come visit them, and his presence brought joy and relief. Jackson asked his friend for help. He asked them all to shoot him with alloy arrows as he wanted to test the effectiveness of his shield created through Tyrant's practice. It is clear that Jason did not expect this form of help, and this caused him surprise and bewilderment. As it turned out, for some reason all his subordinates thought that he was simply looking for an excuse to destroy them all, and this led to misunderstanding and discontent. Jason asked if his friend was joking, since even his perfect golden dome would probably not be able to withstand the impact of arrows, and this was the reason for his dissatisfaction and doubts about the Tyrant's practice. Jason asked if the guy was sleeping, since he had mastered the new technique so quickly, which caused him surprise and suspicion. Jason gave the command to preparing his subordinates for some upcoming events or actions that required their attention and preparation. And in a split second, several dozen arrows were already flying at Jackson, and he was ready to test his shield and the skills that he had just mastered. He began to use his new technique, trying to protect himself from the oncoming arrows and prove the effectiveness of his shield. As expected, the arrows did not harm him much, and his shield, created through the practice of a tyrant, actually turned out to be reliable. Perhaps she was too impressive for her subordinates, and he began to ponder how best to use his skills and techniques in the future. Jackson then thanked everyone present for their help and collaboration in testing his skills and shield, expressing his gratitude. Jason was shocked by this technique, as the guy had already reached an unimaginable stage of cultivation, and his skills were considered impressive and powerful. The men immediately asked how old the guy was, wanting to know more about his background and experience in the world of martial arts. When they found out that he was 15 years old, they realized that they were then incapable of anything at all. The day of exams in 4 academies was approaching, and the main character had to face new challenges and tests. Jackson went into his office to study for the upcoming exams and assess his chances of passing the tests at the 4 academies. Several dozen people were gathered in the office, and the director was at the table, preparing to begin the examination process. It is clear that everyone present did not know who Jackson was, but appreciated his arrogant appearance and behavior, causing interest and bewilderment. One of the guys suddenly thought that he had seen Jackson somewhere before, and this gave him a feeling of familiarity and déjà vu. All those present in the room were pre-masters of the highest rank, which emphasized the high status and significance of this event. The girl asked the guy not to relax, since they both knew that the exam was not going to be easy, and they would have to concentrate as much as possible and show their skills. Since everyone was in place, they could proceed to the start of the exams and move forward to the tests that awaited them. They began to go to the test, preparing for difficult challenges and tests of their skills. The main character entered the inner city 5 months after his rebirth in this world, ready for new adventures and challenges. The walls of the inner city turned out to be much higher than the outer walls, and were made of a completely different material, which gave them impressiveness and reliability. The students were practically approaching the scene of events, where their first tests and tests awaited them inside the inner city. All the structures of the inner city were built from an alloy that could withstand even the attack of second-rank monsters. This emphasized the strong advantage of the inner city over the outer city, which was significantly behind in terms of defense and power. Almost all the people inside the city were cultivators, and this place was considered one of the safest, where everyone had certain skills and could protect themselves. The academy, named Starlight, was one of the leading educational institutions in the inner city, providing education and training to future cultivators. Jackson was slightly surprised when he found out that he was at Starlight Academy, and this was an unexpected discovery for him. The director announced that it was not so easy to get into Starlight Academy, and for this they would have to pass a special test. Only those who successfully passed the test will be admitted to training. It was clear from Jackson's gaze that he was fired up by this idea and was determined to pass the test and enter Starlight Academy. All the buses with the participants have already arrived, and preparations have begun for the start of the tests, when everyone will evaluate their skills and potential. Students from different academies began to get off the buses, ready to begin testing and demonstrate their abilities. As it turned out, their academy was the very first, and the students were ready to begin testing and show their superiority. The director was upset by the words of those present, and his dissatisfaction became more pronounced. The guys stared at this monster and began to wonder what it was doing here and how it could affect their tests. The main character saw in front of him a huge bird monster, which looked impressive and caused him anxiety. The guy finally met the monster's rider, who seemed to be controlling and guiding the bird monster. He was curious to know what stage of cultivation he was currently in, and how strong of skills this rider had. Now he was faced with the question of what he needed to do. This added even more surprise and mystery to the situation.